All right, Jaiden Olsen. This is take two, man. Welcome to the Financial Freedom Fast podcast. How are you doing, my man?
I am loving life. We are doing great. We are living in an Airbnb for the week down in St. George, Utah, just hanging out, just taking some time for ourselves, man. I'm loving being able to work wherever I am and get things done.
Yeah, man, you've got the options to live where you want, when you want, be with who you want. And we
That's
were
right.
just talking, you said, who knows, we might even just extend this trip another week and take some more time here. So,
Yeah.
just for everyone who's listening, me saying second take, Jaden and I think around a week ago, we were doing this recording and it just cut off for some reason. We were about 20 minutes into it. So, we're just going to shoot this thing again and we're gonna rip in. But Jaden, for the people who don't know who you are and how you're able to do this traveling whenever you want, wherever you
Yeah.
want, with whoever you want, what have you done to get yourself to this point? What's your life been like?
It definitely doesn't start there, right? I grew up in a small community doing construction during the summers with my dad and farming during the winter with the family farm. And when I graduated high school, I was poised to take over, or not take over, but keep working in my dad's business doing construction work. I graduated high school in 2009, and there was not a job to be found. And I couldn't find work. So I decided I was going to go to school. Went to college, went up to Utah State University, pursued a degree in structural engineering because I liked the idea of being in construction still, but on the paper and design side rather than the construction side. It seemed appealing to me. So I pursued a 7 year master's degree at Utah State University. Finished that in 2015. While I was at school, I met my sweetheart. We've been married for 9 years almost, and we had one kid before I got a job in Salt Lake City, making $41,600 a year, working 60 hours a week, and just working my butt off. Let me turn my phone to airplane mode. Sorry. Yeah, I've learned really quickly that working as a structural engineer is not the lifestyle that I signed up for. It's 2015, started working. It's the 2016 election cycle. I was doing my due diligence as a U.S. citizen and reading about the candidates running for president. Started reading about this guy named Donald Trump, and he co-authored a few books with the Robert Kiyosaki. And I was like, dang, I got to read more Robert Kiyosaki. I was in the frame of mind where I had to find something that was going to work for my lifestyle, the dreams that I wanted. And ended up reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I told my wife, I'm done being a structural engineer. I'm quitting. And she said, no, you have a kid, you have responsibilities. We need the benefits insurance. And I was like, all right. And that's when I really started to dive into what is financial freedom, what is passive income, how do I achieve the lifestyle that I want. I became a podcast junkie, audiobooks on my commute, and I ended up taking a pay cut to switch jobs to where I could have my Fridays off to pursue my real estate goals. And I ended up buying my first rental property while I was working full time as a structural engineer. And it was a sixplex, a seller finance sixplex that we purchased, and it was awesome. Zero cash flow on day one, so that was intimidating, and I'm sure we'll get into that. About a year after that, I wholesaled an 18 unit apartment complex and made my first six-figure deal and decided I was going to quit my job. And I had enough money in the bank at that time that my wife was like, all right, you better give this a shot. So we quit the job and haven't looked back.
Dude, amazing. Big line of things there. I think we went all the way from what, like 2009 all the way to 2020 21 is was
I
well
quit my
2000
job in 2020. Yeah, it's
2020.
been
Dude, that's a big pop there. So let's talk about this 7 year. It was a 7 year degree. The
7 year master's degree. Yeah.
7 year
I should
math.
so all my math junkies don't freak out on me. I graduated with an associate's degree before I graduated from high school. So I had 2 years under my belt at that time. So I had 5 years to get my master's degree after that.
So let's talk
Yeah.
about this because that's a situation that a lot of people who are listening to this podcast probably find themselves in. Like they've put in all this time to get this degree, and
Yeah.
then they come out not making like literally you were making 41K a year. What was your mindset behind that? And then how did you decide, "Yeah, I don't care what happens here. I'm quitting this job and I'm going to do this real estate stuff," like the
Yeah, I
sunk
mean,
cost?
there's so much, and this is me getting on my soapbox. There's so much wrong with our education system. I started school, I met with the school counselors at the university, and they're like, go into structural engineering, you'll be making 90 grand a year out of school. I'm like, well, that sounds okay. I could do that. And they didn't talk about the lifestyle. They didn't talk about how many hours a week you're supposed to work. And they didn't even talk about what kind of work you'd be doing. It was just like salary and these classes. You take these classes, you get this salary. And I
Mm.
think that's a huge fatal flaw in our education system. And I would encourage anybody who's in the education system to go out and just see what they do for work. Everybody talks about being a doctor, and I think the doctors have the worst jobs in the world because they're on call 100% of the time. Like they work all hours of the night and they still get 2 weeks of paid vacation every year. Yeah, they have higher salaries, but it's not any better, frankly. And there's a huge flaw in our education system. And I think that it's important that people recognize and realize what they're getting themselves into before they start college.
Putting all that, some schools, literally, I was gonna go to NYU after I got my associate's degree. It was $90,000 a year for me to go to
That's
NYU.
insane.
Nuts. And,
That's
like,
45 grand a semester, dude.
dude, it's
That's
insane,
insane.
and I was literally caught between this name brand, or I could go to Rutgers for free, or I could go to which still has a good name, or NYU for 90K, and I still have, maybe I'll do one, but my financial side took over there. So let's talk about dropping your, like, saying, "You know what? I'm done with it." Was there
Yeah.
any hesitation there, like the sunk cost bias behind leaving that job?
It's a great question. 1 year into working full time, I would say that I had zero sunk cost bias and I was all in. Fortunately, I had a wife who's much smarter than me and said, hey, stick this out for another couple of years. At least get your license. You have to work in the field for 3 years before you can get your professional license. And had I quit when I wanted to, I wouldn't have that professional license and I'd almost have to go start back over, if that makes sense. So I worked for 3 years in the field. By the time I finished my 3 years, had my professional license, yeah, my sunk cost bias had accrued, I guess. The balance in my investment into that career had accrued, but I still wanted to pursue real estate full time. And when I made the decision to quit, we had 8 months of savings in the bank. We had 2 kids at that time. And I just said, we're going for it. Doesn't matter. We're going for it. Worst case, I go back and get a job, right? I had my professional license at that time. It'd been easy to find work. So we decided to try it. My sunk cost bias, though, still kicked in a little bit. I realized after quitting my job that yes, real estate pays really well and I can make a ton of money in real estate, but the checks that I was getting were only coming every 8 to 18 months and I
Mm.
needed to provide for my family in the interim between paychecks. And so I actually started using my degree to help house flippers tear out bearing walls, to talk to, there's a lot of lenders that require a letter from a structural engineer on questionable properties.
Yeah, so I was working full time as a real estate investor, working part time as a structural engineer, and doing really well. My first year of business, we I paid more in taxes than I did my previous year's salary. So it was quickly something I realized I wanted to do for the rest of my life was be self-employed. Um,
That's the way to do it, man. I'd rather pay more in taxes than I made the last year. That means I'm doing a lot better. Dude, so you mentioned Robert Kiyosaki. I just want to touch on this because I haven't really talked about this much on the podcast yet, believe it or not. Robert Kiyosaki and his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. What was the big aha that that book brought to you?
the big aha for me is, frankly, just definition of what is an asset and what is a liability. I realized that in my personal net worth, I had zero assets. Like zero. My job was trading time for money. That's not an asset. I had nothing that was paying me just to own it, right? Liabilities take money out of your pocket. Assets put money into your pocket. And my house is not an asset. Frankly, I guess the only thing that I owned at that point that was some kind of an asset was my college degree. I was paying my life with my college degree. And I realized that I'm one step away from poverty. I could get fired from my job and be one step away from poverty. So between those two definitions, I realized very quickly that I needed to shift something in my life.
Right,
Something needed to change.
right. So what changed after that?
I bought assets. I bought my first sixplex. We started house hacking our house. We turned our house into have a basement rental. So we were living for free at the time. I took a pay cut to pursue my real estate goals 1 day a week at least, while
Mhm,
still providing for my family. And bought a sixplex apartment complex. Started building equity in that, and then started a real estate business where we ended up wholesaling that 18-unit apartment complex. And
mm.
it's just been uphill from there.
Dude, so your first real estate purchase was a 6 unit, it was seller finance.
Yeah,
Did you have to put down any money to buy that?
it's a great question. So this was I networked to find this deal. The seller and his wife were leaving on a 2-year mission out of the country for their church. And I said, "Hey, how about this? You don't want to manage this from halfway across the world. Why don't I buy it from you on terms and I'll pay you $2,500 a month, or is it like 2250 a month for the next 5 years, and you guys can just have it easy breezy, bank money." And he's like, "That sounds like a deal." He's like, "That's what I'm pretty much taking home. That's almost as much as I'm taking home from my renters anyway, my tenants anyway, because he was managing
Mhm.
it himself." And so we signed a contract. I bought it for $525,000. The offer that he accepted was a 2% down seller finance deal. So I ended up putting $10,500 down to buy that property. That day, the down payment I borrowed from my home equity line of credit on my primary residence. So $0 out of my pocket to buy that.
No money out of your own pocket, and you mentioned in the beginning that this thing was barely making any money, possibly even losing you money. Let's talk about the mindset around that, and go into the numbers a little bit on it, but let's hear what that was like.
Yeah, so this is a sixplex in just north of Salt Lake. There's a place called Ogden, Utah, and it's the blue collar workers of Utah, the Wasatch Front area. There's a ton of great workers, ton of great renters, but it's not the most desirable neighborhood. So I bought this sixplex for $525,000, payments at $2,250 a month. Gross rents on this thing were between 425 and 550 with
Mhm.
the previous owner. And so he was scraping maybe 2,800 bucks out of it after taxes and insurance and repairs and maintenance. I was cash flow negative. The offers that I initially read him, I said, I can pay you $50,000 if I bring in a partner, buy somebody from a friend, but your purchase price is going to be reduced to $500,000. Or if we do conventional financing, it's going to be like 425 on this thing because the bank won't give me a loan on this. And so I ended up writing an offer at $525,000 with $10,000 out of my pocket, knowing that I could get this deal done myself. If there's zero cash flow, that's okay because I have room to raise rents and I'm going to renovate all these units and I'm going to massively improve the property. And it's all on me. I'm the only person responsible for this deal. If I lose all my money, so what? I can start over. So yeah, it was terrifying. My wife was very supportive and she said, let's do it. And we borrowed the money and bought the sixplex and proceeded to dump every penny we had into this sixplex for a year before we started actually cash flow positive. And then even still, we still dumped it into renovating a bathroom, replacing carpets and floors and stuff like that. And then we ended up selling it in 2021,
Okay, so you sold it in 2021. What did that look like? You bought it for what? 575?
525,
525. What'd you sell it for?
875. So
870.
after real estate commissions, we ended up clearing almost 300 grand.
300 grand, and that was over how many years?
Just over 2.5 years.
2.5 years, dude.
Yep.
300 grand. That's literally enough, like, just outside of the cash flow, if there was any, like, real estate goes up in value, and you increase the value of this thing by increasing the income that it was bringing in.
Yeah, we
So
raised rents to almost not, or just over 900 a unit on every single unit.
and they were
Just
starting at around
four,
500,
yeah,
450,
450 to 525. Yep. It's almost
450.
doubled the rents on it.
And that's a important lesson in commercial real estate, so over 4 units, like commercial residential, so you
Yeah,
got a 5 unit, 6 unit. So we're talking about a 6 unit here, it's valued based on the income of the property. From a mathematical equation based on cap rates, if you can increase the income, increase the net operating income, and you're buying it at least the current market rate, you're increasing the value of that property
absolutely. That's exactly right. Yep.
right away, man. So let's
Yep.
jump to when you quit your job. You made $100,000 on a wholesale and said, "This is good. I can make this work." Tell people what exactly is wholesaling, and then let's go over what this deal was.
Yeah. So wholesaling is essentially flipping the contract, flipping the paper. A lot of people know what flipping homes are. This is just flipping the paper. So when I wholesale something, I put a property under contract. That means that I own the rights to that contract and the terms of that contract, meaning the purchase price and everything else in the contract. If I wholesale it, that means that I'm going to assign the contract to an end buyer, somebody that wants to buy the asset, who has more money, assets, time, whatever, than me. And I can assign that contract to them for a fee. This 18 unit apartment complex is one that I hired a cold caller to call on. I gave him a list, and the first day calling this list, he called the owner of this 18 unit apartment complex in Salt Lake. And the owner's like, yeah, 2 million and I'll sell it to you. And in Salt Lake, in our market, that's a deal. 2 million for 18 units. I'm like, okay, that's a deal. Let's go check this thing out. So we called up the owner, set up the appointment, went to his house. This guy's in his 80s. He says, all right, if you want to buy this, if you're serious, I need $2 million in 10 days so that I can complete my 1031 exchange for this property I'm buying in Boston. You can't walk the property, and I need $10,000 non-refundable today if you want it. And so I'm scared out of my pants, and I say, deal, shake his hand, write a check for $10,000 from my home equity line of credit. Again, non-refundable. And I said, I'm going to make this happen. Whether I learn a lesson or I make a ton of money, I'm going to make this happen. So we put him under contract. I proceeded to call 3 people from my network who I knew had money and who were looking to buy assets of this type. And on the third call, I found a buddy. I was advertising this property at $2.1 million. And he said, done, I'll buy it. 10 days later, we closed. I walk home with a check, a $100,000 check in my hands. And my life was changed from making $41,000 a year as an engineer to having that much cash ready to go.
You almost doubled your salary just by literally when he says flipping paper. By paper, he means the contract, and by flipping, he means he literally signed it with his name, and it said it could be assigned to someone else. So my name is Jaiden Olsen. I'm buying this at $2 million, and here is buyer that I'm selling to. He's buying it at 2.1. Here's the new contract. You buy it directly from him, and Jaden basically just acted as a middleman. Dude,
Yep.
I love that. And then so you quit, and I know you was there any bias or anyone in the family that tried to keep you away from doing the quitting?
That was a personal decision that my wife and I made. And we said, we're quitting. We're going to try this. I have dreams that we want to fulfill and pursue, and we're going to do it. So as far as people stopping me or telling me not to on their run, absolutely not. That was the decision we made privately. About 2.5 months, 3 months into it, my wife's grandmother, who's loving and wonderful, and she's amazing, she calls me and says, Jaiden, what on earth are you doing? What are you doing to my granddaughter and my great grandkids? You had this cushy, in her mind, she grew up in the Great Depression. You had this cushy, secure, you got benefits. Why are you quitting? And I'm like, I'm doing what's best for me and my family. What else do you say? And I would love her for her concern. But there are times when you have to draw the line on your personal beliefs and your dreams and say, I'm doing what's most important for me and my family.
And I have heard that story before, and I just wanted to make sure it was said on this podcast because there's always going to be people that come to you and question what you may be doing, and you're going to be the one that knows what's right for you, what you actually want to do, what's best for you and your family. And
Absolutely.
I applaud you for making that move there, man.
Appreciate it.
Um, so you started investing in 2018, I believe you bought this six.
Yeah, we had our house hack before that, our basement rental. We started in 2016, 2017.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll call it 2017 then is when you started investing. What is today is it's sometime in February 2023.
2023. Yeah.
What's your portfolio look like today?
Yeah, so we ended up selling a bunch of rentals in 2021, and I regretted that decision for about a year, and now I'm very grateful that I made that decision.
Mm.
Watched the market climb and climb. another 20%. It's hard, but I knew we were reaching the peak of the market and decided I wanted to level up my portfolio from these 1 and 2 and 6 unit apartment complexes to something bigger. So my threshold for what I'm after now is 40 units and larger as far as the buy and hold space. Then we've got some short-term rental portfolios that are 10 units and larger in some desirable areas.
Where's I know you've got some in Alaska, right?
Yes, we do. Yep.
Where else are your short-term rentals?
We're working on some down here in southern Utah near Zion's National Park and
Ooh,
some of these others. So we're hoping to get this one landed. Yeah.
dude, that's pretty great. So what did your portfolio look like in 2021 when you sold a lot of that off?
Yeah, we had the sixplex. We had our primary home with that rental, and we just had a few other things that were just short-term rental arbitrage, whatever.
Right.
That's the main look of our portfolio. So we went cash heavy. We started doing some more development when we went into 2021, 2022. We bought some land, about 30 acres in northern Utah that we are wanting to put 30 homes on. So that's under process right now. And we're shifting to a lot much bigger projects.
Dude, I like that, man. You've got it going and you still have this business that's running on the side. How involved are you in your engineering business?
Yeah. When I quit engineering, I left a field that was very ingrained and hard to change. There's a lot of people in that field who've been in the industry for a long time and they haven't been willing to modify their systems or processes. Like they embrace the drafting stuff and a few things here and there. But when I quit, I decided I'm not going to do that. It sucks. It's a terrible business model and nobody knows how to make any money.
Yeah.
So I started the business mainly consulting on remodel projects and writing reports. The reason that I chose to do writing reports is because I can go out on site, take a few pictures, send a voice recording to my virtual assistant who can then format the report, type it out, upload all the pictures, and then send it back to me to review.
Mm.
And this was like, in my mind, I'm flipping the whole engineering model on its head. And because nobody else is employing virtual assistants or offloading their low priority or low income tasks to somebody else. So I quickly started getting really busy with this. I was doing 1 to 2 days a week full time in this business, which when I quit, I said I'm only going to do 2 days a week at most to provide for my family because that's all I needed to do. And then a year in, I started working Wednesdays, started working Fridays, and started working Saturday occasionally because I was just super busy. And I finally got to a point where I'm like, I either have to really see what I can do with this and hire more people to help me with this, or I've got to quit doing it entirely and just focus on the real estate side. So in January 2022, I decided I was going to scale the business and see where I could take it. So I hired 3 people while still running my real estate team full time. And I stopped saying no to different types of projects and we started doing a whole bunch of different stuff. And I'm still working 1 to 2 days a week in that business, but we scaled that business from $5,000 to $7,000 a month, working 1 to 2 days a week to doing over $70,000 to $80,000 a month by the end of 2022. We're still working 1 to 2 days a week typically.
Man, and what's like the profit on that? 70 grand revenue a month?
Yeah, gross revenue a month. I wouldn't say that I'm the leanest by any means. I employ a lot of virtual assistants and I pay my virtual assistants better than most too.
Mm.
My engineers, I'm paying $35 to $50 an hour. And you talk virtual assistants, that's 10 times what most virtual assistants are making.
Yeah.
And in my mind, when I started hiring people, I'm like, I don't care what I pay as long as I'm getting paid more on the backside. So for a good part of the year, I was running 50 to 70% expense ratio. So I'm not
Mm.
making a ton of money on that, but we are trimming that up, trimming the fat, getting lean again, and going to niche down on what really is profitable
Hell, man,
projects.
I I think 35 grand a month sounds pretty good to me.
Oh, heck yeah, dude.
So I wouldn't say it's not making too much money, man. That's amazing to hear. You've got a bunch of different things in the works, and it seems like you're only going bigger from here, man. So
Heck yeah.
here's a question, the main question on this podcast: fastest way to 10K. If you were starting from scratch right now, no
Yep.
assets, let's say you were making $70,000 a year, how would you go about building up $10,000 a month in passive income?
So passive income's a really challenging one, in my opinion. I think that there's And the market shifted, right? If I were to say $10,000 a month in 2017, I would have said wholesale
Right.
all day long. Put the systems in place, put the people in place, build that business out and start a wholesale company. I think that's the fastest way you could have in 2017.
Mm.
Today, I think people are still navigating the changes in the real estate market, the development space, all that. For me personally, I'm working on building or turning my real estate company into more of an entitlements company. So this property we're working on in northern Utah we're going to put 32 lots. Subdividing these lots into 32 single family homes. And we can make $2.5 to $3.5 million in less than 6 months just by selling this, like developing it, putting in all the paperwork and getting it ready for a developer to come in and build these single family homes. And I've got people in place and systems in place that I don't have to do a lot with that.
Mm.
And if I were starting from ground zero, square one, I would say that a short-term rentals is a great space to look. And I think it's easy model. Yeah, there's some upfront work, but I think that the model for success in the short-term rental space right now has never been easier for somebody to pick up quick, and you can scale that very quickly with the proper systems and everything. That's what I would say.
Do you get any nervousness out there with different markets and short-term rentals, like that the town could come and say, "Hey, you can't do these short-term rentals here anymore."
100%. I think for me, with my short-term rental businesses, we are looking at properties that have 10 or more units on them,
Mm.
and they're all located within a very small radius of each other, and they all have proper permits from the city to operate as short-term rentals. So we're focusing on like vacation or destination areas where the cities they acknowledge that tourism is a good part of their business, their economics, and they encourage that sort of thing. So the ones that we have in Kenai, Alaska, city is well aware that we are running this as a short-term rental. We pay sales tax as a short-term rental, which is different than
Mm.
these other jurisdictions, but we're registered as short-term rentals and we operate that way. Near the national parks here in Utah, there's a lot of jurisdictions that want to bring in more short-term rental stuff because they're more desirable than the hotels. But as long as you're working with the city and making it right, I have no fear that these are going to be very successful projects for us.
So talk to the town and make sure that you're all on the same page. What do the numbers look like on your or what do the expected numbers look like on the Kenai 10 units?
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit. So this is a 10 fishing cabins on the Kenai River in Kenai, Alaska. We purchased it for $634,000. I syndicated this one, which means I brought 10 investors in with $50,000 a piece or something like that. And we financed a very small portion. We're going to build out 5 more cabins on the property, but the numbers are incredible. So you're talking 10 cabins for $630,000, and each cabin brings in about $300 a night for 100 days out of the year. And then the rest of the time, they're transitioning to long-term rentals through the Alaskan winters. We get all these people off of the high country that want to stay closer to the ocean where it's more temperate, 25 degrees Fahrenheit rather than 40 degrees below. So they rent out really easily in the winter. Wintertime, we're break even, but summertime, we're looking at 30 to 40% profit on some of these. So we're giving our investors 15 to 20% ROI. And then our property management is expensive because on site, they do all the filleting of the fish, cleaning of the fish, packaging of the fish, and turning the tenants and keeping everybody happy. But yeah, the numbers are incredible. We're giving our investors 15 to 20% returns. And as of right now, we're about 90% booked for the season already. So it's great.
Dude, that's incredible, and I love that. So tell me, we have talked in the past on this. You took some recent losses, some pretty big losses on one flip project that you were doing. Can you tell us about that? Tell us how you felt, and are you going to
Absolutely.
keep flipping? What have you learned?
Good questions. Yeah. So let's see, let's back up a little bit. 2020, 2021, we were flipping a few homes a year, doing pretty well, and things got crazy competitive. We were seeing wholesalers be bid up $100,000, $200,000 from their purchase price. And I'm like, screw this. We wanted to get into the luxury space where there was less competition. And I say I have a business partner. His name's Joey Webb. We were doing stuff at the time. Anyway, we bought this project in North Salt Lake. It's a 3,500 square foot home, and we put a sorry, 4,500 square foot home. And we put almost a 3,500 square foot addition on it to, because the comps in the neighborhood were showing like these 5 to 7,000 square foot homes getting $230 to $300 a square foot. And so we wanted to bring this home up to that level by adding a massive addition on it. It's a great location up on the hill, incredible views. The neighborhood justified this kind of property, right? So we bought it for $400,000 cash. We took a home equity line of credit against it and paid for $400,000 worth of renovation. Our initial projected rehab budget was $700,000. And this was in April of 2021.
Mm,
So as we were doing this, we proceeded to watch construction costs go crazy. Our framing package was initially going to be $110,000 labor and material. We ended up spending $215,000 in labor and material on the framing package alone. Our concrete package, we spent over $135,000 between the excavation, the concrete foundation, the unexpected retaining walls that the city made us put in,
mhm.
and the driveway, just because concrete costs went to over $300 a yard just in material and another $300 a yard to install it. So we're riding this wave of construction materials, labor costs, all the way up. Meanwhile, we're feeling okay with ourselves because appreciation in the area is just going crazy. We watched our ARV, our after repair value, go from 1.4, 1.5 million all the way up to 1.8, 1.9 million in just like a little over a year. It was incredible. So we were busting our butts trying to get this thing done. We ended up listing it in September 2022, which, if you know anything about the real estate market last year, interest rates doubled over the course of less than 6 months, I think. And we watched our ARV plummet from 1.8, 1.9 down to 1.3, 1.4. And it just hit us hard. Our timing was bad. Interest rates killed us. The construction costs, like the overburden of labor and materials, was a nightmare. So we ended up taking a massive loss on that project. We lost $300,000. We ended up closing on it like 3 weeks ago, finally. And we're just grateful to be alive. That one was a little bit scary.
Hey, you keep on going past it, man. 300,000 is a lot of money. What were your biggest learning lessons from that?
Yeah, managing contractors and managing time is the big one. You have to have a really good relationship with your contractors. You have to know where they're coming from, as far as even just to simply location. Our framer was an hour commute to the project every day. And we were lucky to get 3, 4, 5 hours of work out of him every day just because he was commuting. He had lunch and everything. And that we were 4.5 months of framing alone on that project, which is a nightmare. 4.5 months would have saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars if we got listed in June rather than September because interest rates were better. So managing contractors, managing timelines, and managing budgets, all super valuable, super important lessons. But more than anything, it's chin up. There's always another deal. It'd be easy for me to stick my head in the sand and say, I failed as an investor. I lost all this money and I'm never going to do it again. But frankly, I'm never going to make that kind of money in anything else. Like, we've got so many deals in our pipeline right now, and we're just onward and upward going to make more money. The other thing that I learned is that it's so much more important for me to value my investors' money. Like, I had 3 partners on this project who put money into the deal for me, and they all hit their 12%, 10% returns on their money, even though I lost money. And I'm so grateful to have those relationships and to have been able to keep those intact because, yeah, I lost a lot of money, but I still have great relationships with my investors, and they're going to give me money on the next deal.
Yeah, dude, and they have even more trust in you now that you took a big L yourself, and, like, they didn't have to take that L, so,
Yeah,
dude,
and I
awesome.
yeah, I can now call myself an experienced investor. And we had 3 to 5 years of incredible real estate market, and I
Right.
didn't lose a dime for a long time. And so I'm grateful that, yeah, I've got that experience. I've got these lessons under my belt, and I can move on to the next project.
Next
You asked if I was going to keep flipping. The answer is not on a large scale. My strengths don't lie in flipping. As a structural engineer, I'm very strict on code and making sure I'm improving the asset. And as my experience in construction, I am super particular and picky on finishes and everything. And I'm deploying my skill sets into the new construction and development space rather than the flipping space.
New construction, man, and we were talking a little bit about that, dude. You've got, like, a 200 268 acres, is that what it is?
260 acres in southeastern Idaho. Yep.
And you're trying to get the licensing on that to be able to build around 1,000 units?
1,000 homes.
I love
It's
that.
awesome. Yep.
Hey, final questions here. What is one actionable step that our listeners should take today to start on their path towards financial freedom?
The thing that I tell everybody is to network, talk to people. That's the way I got my start, was talking to people, figuring out how other people are making money in real estate. Listening to podcasts is great, but you got to get out and talk to people in the business. Reach out to your local real estate investor network. Start talking to people that are actually doing what you want to do. There's no faster way to get to where you want to go than to surround yourself with people who are already there.
I love that. I see so much power in networking. The people that you surround yourself with are the people that you ultimately become. They bring you up to if you surround yourself with a bunch of people doing things that you don't wanna do and you're just going out and drinking every single weekend inside, you don't wanna be doing that, and the only people you hang out with are people you're doing that, you're just gonna keep doing that. So,
Yep.
Nothing's going to change.
go find some
Yep.
friends like Jaden that can
Hit me
pull you
up.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, go visit him out in Utah, which I still gotta make it out there. Last question, bro. What is one question that you wish I woulda asked or a topic that you wish I woulda covered? And how would you have answered that question? How would you have expanded upon that topic?
I talked briefly about development, and that's one thing that I wish we would have dived in a little bit more on because I'm super passionate about it. And I'm surrounding myself with people who are doing more and more development projects, entitlement projects. And there's not enough people out there that are doing development or entitlement. Developers are often looked at in our society as greedy bastards or whatever you want to call them. These guys who
Mm,
come in and they take all this land and they're turning it into something that's actually going to make a profit. And I think that the bad rap that developers have is turning a lot of people away from it. But there's so much money to be made in development, and it's not that hard to do. I'm fortunate that I have a degree in engineering and I worked in the field. And so I understand the paperwork side of things and the navigating of the cities and the jurisdictions that way. Anybody can do it. It's really not that difficult. So
mm.
reach out to me if you have questions.
Yeah, where should people go to I'll ask where they can reach out to you after this, but what's a good resource for people to possibly look into development?
Yeah, there's not a ton of great resources. There's a coach here in Utah. His name's Mike Watson. I have taken his course. He's super intelligent, super good guy. But I would just say talk to people that are doing development. Surround yourself with those kinds of people and see where they learned it.
Love it, man. Love it. Network. Where can my listeners or watchers find you online?
Yeah, I recommend you can reach out to me on my Instagram. My handle is at Jaiden Olsen 23. And that's usually the best place to get me. Twitter or Facebook, either of those two.
Cool. And I'll
Cool.
probably link to that in our show notes so you guys can shoot Jaden a follow. But Jaden, man, appreciate you. Love you, man. And from the
Back at you, man.
Financial Freedom Fast podcast, man, we love to have you on. Appreciate your
Thanks so
time.
much for having me.
Yeah, brother.